Welcome to Hidden Voices, the podcast series which explores the less heard voices in health and social care. I'm Renee and I work for Healthwatch Essex. It's our job to make sure that people's experiences help to improve health and social care services. Following on from our recent research into young people's experiences of dyslexia, in this episode we're talking to Belle and her mum Lou about their experiences. So first off, thank you both so much for joining us today. So I guess sort of setting the scene a little bit. Belle, how old were you, if you remember, when you were diagnosed with dyslexia?
I don't know.
No, so it was picked up by the school when she was about 7, and she was formally diagnosed when she was 9.
Yeah.
Following a formal assessment.
And how old are you now?
14.
14, wonderful. Before your diagnosis, what signs did you have of dyslexia?
Do you remember? She doesn't remember most of this.
Quite young, yeah.
Yeah, it was. We hadn't noticed anything at all as her parents, to be completely honest. And it was one parents' evening. She had this lovely teacher when she was in Key Stage 1. At one of the parents' evenings, sort of said, "I'm not quite sure, but I think Belle might have maybe dyslexia or dyspraxia." We weren't really sure at the time. I mean, we had spotted that she did her B's and her D's and things back to front. I think that's really common, like when children are learning. So it kind of started from there, really. Her primary school were great. We had a meeting with the Senko, and then it sort of started this process of sort of investigating what it could be, or potentially nothing at all. So that was kind of all where it started.
It's often actually the schools which end up picking up on children having dyslexia, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, you often hear about that's the main route that it kind of gets sort of discovered a little bit. But did either of you have any sort of inkling at all? Was it a bit of a surprise?
No, I'd say mainly it was just I don't think we did. We weren't bothered when the teacher said. We were really appreciative that was something she'd sort of picked up.
Yeah.
But again, other than the letters maybe being back to front, I've got a few little pictures, when they start to do it on the little whiteboard things, and she'd always do that. But I think I
still do that.
Yeah, sometimes
now.
Yeah. But when they're sort of, maybe she might have been 5 or 6 just learning to write, you just think, oh, okay,
so
she's
young,
just doing it.
yeah.
I mean, it's a lot. So so I think it was a surprise in a way, but it was fine. We just got on with it with the Senko. I wasn't sort of, my auntie, she's dyslexic, and I know a couple of other family friends and things, so it wasn't anything we were concerned about. We just sort of worked with the school, and it's all kind of turned out fine, really, hasn't it?
Yeah. Amazing, fantastic. So I guess I'll ask this question maybe firstly to Belle and then get your view, Lou, from the parents' perspective. It's quite a big question. But with your sort of dyslexia assessment and your diagnosis experience, how did you find it? Was it quite positive for you?
Yeah, it was positive.
Yeah.
I don't remember it very much.
No.
But I think it was good. I think Dad took, didn't he?
Yeah.
We went to some lady's house. It was funny. Because Dad stuck to ice skating.
I took you ice skating as a treat, didn't you, afterwards, because it was quite long, the assessment. I think it was about
4.5 hours.
Yeah, about 4.5 hours, so it's quite a lot.
It's not that long anymore, I don't think.
Oh, have you had some friends do it more recently?
Yeah.
So this was like 6 years ago or so. But again, you don't really remember much of it, do you?
No, I just remember doing my alphabet all the time, 24/7 with her. She would do it forwards and backwards and mix it up. And
we're going to keep in a bit about your dad falling over as well. Make sure that stays in the podcast. But from sort of the parents' perspective, how did you find the experience?
Yeah, so we, first of all, before we went for the formal dyslexia assessment, we were referred to the multi-sensory training centre in Colchester first. So when she was 7, we first started picking this up, she went there and they did sort of various sort of different tests on her sort of senses and things. They explained to us that when you're a child, your senses develop, and maybe some of them haven't developed correctly. So they did all these sorts of tests on her, and then they did lots of tests. Oh, she had to have this string on the end of her nose, and it was like her eyes and stuff, to check it wasn't visual.
Yeah.
All the sort of issues that had been picked up. So we did that first. I think we went there for a year, so I had to take her out of school, and we'd go there for this hour session, because they said she was maybe a bit too young at that point to do the dyslexia assessment. So we waited till she was 9, and then my husband took her they did say most of it she would sort of be doing all the tests, so it didn't need both of us. It wasn't about us as parents, it was about her.
Yeah.
So yeah, obviously you have to pay privately to get the tests done. They're not done on the NHS, so you have to find. So you do have to go through the process of trying to find someone. The waiting lists at the time were quite long as well, so we managed to find someone in Chelmsford.
How did you find the person you thought would be best suited for?
So this is testing my memory a little bit, but basically through the multisensory training team that we've been to, they couldn't do formal dyslexia assessments, so they referred us or told us to look on, it must be like dyslexia.org or some, the official dyslexia website, where then you can do a postcode search to look up people that are registered to do the dyslexia assessment. So I think it was as simple as for us where we were living, put in the postcode, found some people nearby. I just probably read a few reviews. Didn't overthink it, to be completely honest. And then we found this lady in Chelmsford. I think a friend of mine had used her as well. I was sort of talking to her. So, and then we sort of booked her in. I think there was a bit of a wait. It must have been about 3 or 4 months. I could probably look back at my emails. And then, when we went to see her, and they did this formal assessment, and then you get all the results back with recommendations. It's a really detailed report, analysis about every single thing they tested her on, recommendations for us as parents and to share with schools. And then they also said about, due to her age, she was only 9 at the time, that they recommended she had another assessment when it was coming closer to her GCSEs, because that's when it becomes important about potentially needing extra time and things. She was too young at that stage to know how it would improve or not for being at sort of the age she is now. But on the whole, I think the process, it was relatively easy, but we had a lot of support, I suppose, because we'd gone to the multi-sensory training place. We had the Senko at school, so I can imagine it could be an overwhelming process for someone. But we kind of got to the diagnosis, and then it was sort of, we knew what we had to do after that, because then the school were involved, everyone had access to the report, and we just worked off of that basically.
Amazing. So it's like quite sort of a clear
It did
process.
feel, I think, I mean, there were little things along the way, but nothing major. It seemed like once you know what you're doing, you get this report, and then you use what's in the report to work with the teachers. The report's been more important when she went to senior school. I guess when they're at primary school, they're kind of all in a classroom together. You'll generally get handouts, don't you? It's not as sort of pressurised environment of we've got this is all on the board, everyone write it down kind of thing. So it has been more helpful since she's been at senior school.
Amazing. So it sounds sort of overall from what you shared quite a positive experience really, but was there anything, put you on the spot a little bit here, but is there anything which you thought could have been improved from either perspective?
I don't think there's necessarily anything that could have being improved. I think as long as you sort of, it's not as obvious maybe where to look, so you're relying on the support, I suppose, of really good of the school, of the Senko, of being referred, like this multi-sensory place in Colchester. I mean, I'd never heard of it, and I guess probably most people wouldn't have known it existed. So you're kind of like, I wouldn't have probably found that by Googling. So I guess it does feel like maybe one of those processes that you could be really lucky to just get the right people giving you the right information. And if you're trying to navigate that process on your own, you probably could get quite overwhelmed by the amount of stuff you might find, or what having dyslexia might mean to someone. Because in fact, it hasn't really been that bad at all. In fact, we have a bit of a laugh about it on occasions, don't we? It can bring some entertainment. But I think it can be an overwhelming process for some people, definitely.
Fantastic, thank you. So with yourself, Belle, how has having dyslexia impacted you, whether it might be sort of your school life, personal life?
I don't know, it's different in different situations. Like in sport, because I play a lot of sport, I find it more difficult to understand the drills and stuff when it comes to lefts and rights. And then obviously they have to explain it, or they have to find a way around it. But my club are quite good at doing that. And then in school, I don't know. In school, the school are quite helpful with it. They give me the stuff that I need, and they gave me a laptop and a reading pen and extra time.
Yeah, that was useful, wasn't it? These reading pens, like things like that we would have never known.
Well, what are the reading pens?
They like scan the text and it reads it back out to you.
Do you have headphones?
Yeah,
in,
you
don't
have headphones in, so I get it in like exams, and you like put the pen over the paper, and then it will read it back to you, so you don't actually have to read it.
Yeah.
And then I can it just does it for me.
And your friends, we've never kept it. Not that it should be, of course, but we've never kept it like a secret about your dyslexia, have we? You're quite open and sort of have a bit of a laugh, I suppose one might say, with your friends because of her interest in ways of spelling certain things.
They just help me or make fun of me and my spellings.
But your friends are can be quite helpful as well, can't they? Like a lot of your close friends.
They're quite smart. They all know how to spell. They'll tell me how to spell. They all help me with my spellings.
Fantastic. It sounds like you've got a really good sort of support network around you. And actually, not that leads in really well. You kind of answered it both a little bit anyway, but about since receiving your diagnosis of dyslexia, what sort of help and support have you received? Is it mainly from the school?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Most of this, from her senior school now, we don't sort of do anything external.
I used to do that dyslexic tutor thing, the special one in year 6, the one that did different things with me.
Oh yes,
and she taught me different ways to do stuff.
Yeah, that was in a primary school, wasn't it? You did the special, special.
We went to our house.
Oh yes.
That
oh
one.
yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes, we did, didn't we? God, it's amazing. See, I feel like you just sort of get on with it. So yes, she did have. When she was still in primary school, we had a dyslexia tutor.
Yeah.
So she used to go. Do you want to explain what you do? Yeah, sorry.
I don't really remember much about it.
Oh, we used to go there once a week, didn't you? And she would do just different things with Belle, like.
She did like my phonetics with me, like all the basic stuff, just to I guess reinforce it.
Yeah.
And improve it.
And sort of memory games you would do, wouldn't you? Lots of memory
yes.
games and teaching us some of the skills, that you would need. She told us about the dyslexic dictionary. Like this is a thing I would never have even known existed. You have these like a dictionary. You don't use it so much now. You don't like to, do you? But you have this dictionary that you look in the dictionary as someone who's dyslexic, how you would spell a word, and then the actual spelling of the word it's like I can't even explain. It's like trickery, this dictionary, because you can literally, she can think how she would want to spell a word and then find the actual word. Yeah, so it's really, really clever. So we did actually, you had her in year 6, didn't you? So still in primary school.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about that.
Did that come through the school as well, or was that?
I don't think so.
No, I think that was part of the dyslexia assessment thing. Some of the things that they'd recommended, thinking back, and again, it wasn't something that you would have to do, and we did sort of pay for it. And luckily, she lived nearby, didn't she? She wasn't too far away. Yeah, so just down the road from us. So again, it's not something you would have to do, but it's something we chose to do just to help her with some of these sort of skills for sort of managing, how you might break down tasks and things like that. I think she did some really things like not shoelaces, but she did all. She taught me different range of
She taught me different ways around stuff.
Yeah,
like different techniques. She did do my shoelaces with me.
Yeah, I thought she did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had that as well.
And I think actually that's a really interesting point bringing up like the shoelaces, because I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I know when talking to other people who've got lived experience with dyslexia, they said that, I'm putting words in your mouth here now, I guess, but they said about there's always this presumption that dyslexia is just like writing and things like that, when actually from what you've been saying, it could sort of show it in different ways as well.
Oh, definitely. Like your reading is perfectly, like you wouldn't, because I think, I would assume that previous to Belle's diagnosis, that when you say dyslexia, you think someone can't spell and they can't read very well, is what my brain would have said prior to knowing all of this. But in fact, Belle does not, you don't struggle with your reading at all.
No, I just struggle if it's like really small, then the words will like mix up on the page.
Yeah, but in terms of understanding all the words and things like that, although you don't enjoy reading, do you? Because you don't sort of
I don't process it. I just read it and then it just nothing happens.
She could read a whole page of text, and then we'd say to her, you know, what have you just read? And she'll be like, I don't know. And I'll be like, no, come on, you've just read a whole page. Like, you must know what you've just read. And she'll be like, no.
Yeah.
But she can like read, and I know there's different types of dyslexia. Some people can't read, but they can spell perfectly well. So yeah, hers is more visual processing, and kind of spelling is the way it impacts you. But then the visual processing does affect your left and right. Maybe how she approaches tasks, like shoelaces. You know, I would say the traditional way of doing shoelaces, that probably, I don't know what percentage of people would do it, what I would call the normal way, but that's because that's me. Just wouldn't, it just didn't
Yeah,
go.
when I did it at school, everyone was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, I've never seen this before, and I was like, I'm just good like that.
Yeah. But it just worked for her, and then that was how she did her shoelaces. And then when we'd show people how she did her shoelaces, people were like, that is crazy, but how cool is it? It's because it's so simple way of doing it, but that kind of just worked for her. So there's probably so many things that we've maybe slightly adapted, but we just don't think about it. We're just like, well, that's just how Belle.
Because it's like
That's
every
just
day,
yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, just because how I do something doesn't mean the way I do it's normal. Like, it's normal for her, what's normal for me, what's normal for, you know, all of you guys. So
Yeah. So we've spoken to some other young people who've got experiences of dyslexia, and they'd shared with us before that due to sort of difficulties linked with having dyslexia, they'd had times where they'd felt really sort of like tired, stressed, and like frustrated, for example. Is this something which you feel like you've had yourself, or do you not really sort of relate to that?
I don't know. Because I don't know if it's related to dyslexia or not. I don't know if I'm just like tired and stressed and whatever, or if it's just the dyslexia. I couldn't tell.
like when you're doing what do you mean? Like if you're doing homework? And...
Yeah, or like, I don't know. I just don't know.
She doesn't know.
Doesn't know, that's absolutely fine. It wasn't all young people which said this, so it could be that it's only like those sort of select few. For someone who may not have dyslexia, what would you want them to know about it?
They don't need to worry about it, and that there are ways around it, and that you can get the help, and people will be there to help you, and just work with the people that are there for you to help.
Fantastic, thank you. And you kind of actually answered it, 'cause my next question is going to be about what advice would you give to another child or young person who's just been diagnosed. Do you think there's anything more that you want to add to that, or...?
Probably to find out what it actually is, because I still don't really know what it is. I just know like how it affects me, whereas other people obviously have different opinions on what it is, especially people at school, because they always just think it's like reading and writing, but it's not. And then I try to explain it to them and they still don't really understand, but yeah.
Fantastic. So, has there been anything that we haven't covered yet that you think would be really important to share regarding sort of your own lived experience and from maybe a parent's perspective as well?
I suppose I was thinking about this like this morning, like on reflection. I suppose with something like dyslexia, it doesn't kind of, the diagnosis maybe isn't final. I suppose is if that's the right word, because I suppose there's things that I'm thinking about in terms of how will it be in her driving lessons or driving test, you know, just little things where we know she's got to focus on left and right, and it actually has to be the right left and right when you're learning to drive. So little things like that, I suppose it's just, there are always new things that maybe you have to think about. Or sometimes as parents, like we have to reflect and be like, okay, that wasn't her, just being a 14-year-old and ignoring us. That actually is part of dyslexia, when you sort of, you can give Belle a task sometimes, or just literally like any parent would, Belle, do us a favour, when you're coming down, bring something downstairs, and she just forgets. And you're like, really? But then actually, if you've given her too many tasks at once, she can't always remember all of them, and sometimes we have to sort of remember that as well. But where she's just kind of got on with it, it's harder to do that, because then you're just, oh god, yeah, I have to remind myself that actually some of these things we need to give her a little bit of leeway on. So it becomes very normal, but you have to remember that she's trying super hard to sort of make all this just seem kind of everyday kind of stuff, really.
Thank you. Did you have to be reassessed for your GCSEs? Did that end up happening?
No.
What, the one that I did at school?
Yes, so basically hers, so it was something that we've had sort of in our minds that we needed to do, and she has Senko even at senior school, so I have termly check-ins with the Senko, and then they proactively came to us to say that they do like an assessment thing in school where they reassess any students that have dyslexia or other sort of learning things for times. So she did an assessment that the school kind of organised. You did some tests, I think, didn't you, or something? And funnily enough, actually, we got the results back from that, and we just got an email from the school that just said, we've done all these tests and Belle doesn't need extra time for her GCSEs. So I was like, oh God, I was not expecting that. Not that I think she should definitely have it, but you know, when you're just like, okay. So I did go back to the school and say, look, I don't want to, I'm not by nature like a sort of a pushy parent, but what I don't want to do is look back and think, should I have, you know, said something else, like, you know. And then actually the Senko teacher did say, well, there is another visual processing test or something they could do. I think that was it. Sorry if I've got that wrong. But there was another test that she could do, and sure enough, she did that, and then it went to the exam board, and they came back and she gets 25% extra time on all of her exams for her GCSEs. So that was done by the school. We didn't have to go back for another full dyslexia assessment. So I'd say as well, maybe something, again, it's sort of against my nature, as I'd say, is you really kind of have to advocate for, you know, probably with all sorts of, you know, other things as well, but with dyslexia, because she could have done that test and they'd have said, no, that's perfectly fine, and then we'd have been happy that we did everything we could have possibly done. But again, people wouldn't, it's tough. I think dyslexia is a difficult thing to know what's the right and wrong thing to do, because there's no, or there wasn't when we started this journey, knowing like a tick box of all the things that you should be doing. Make sure you're doing this, make sure you're doing that. Did you know that there's this test and then there's that test when they're doing their GCSEs? Because I guess if I hadn't have gone back, we would have never have known there was a different test you could have done.
It's a good job you mentioned it.
Yeah,
so it probably impacted exams and things like that.
But yeah, so yeah, I don't know if it is difficult to sort of know what's definitely out there. But I must admit, I'm not one for reading lots and lots of books on things. I'd rather follow our own path in something. Yeah. So you could argue if I'd have read all the books and did more research, I would have known this. So I'm not saying what's right or wrong, but that's just how it's worked out for us. Because the school they just kind of organised all of that. And we didn't have to pay anything extra. It wasn't a formal. No. So I think it's the exam board. I think it was more of an assessment that the exam boards.
They took all of us, like everyone who has extra time, out of the assembly. Yeah. And we went into the library and we did the extra time test, which is like writing stuff down. You had like 30 seconds to prepare what you wanted to write. You'd write it down and she'd say stop and you'd have to put a line through it and then you'd continue so she could see how quickly you write. And we did loads of tests like that. Yeah. And then that's what it was originally. And then I did the visual one, which was like showed 3 faces and then it showed 12 faces and you had to pick the 3 faces that were just shown. That's what the other one was. Yeah. That's the one that gave me the extra time, was the visual one.
Yeah, visual processing.
Amazing, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So we always end by asking our guests, I'm going to put you on the spot now, what would be the title of your life story?
I think it should be something about your spellings and how much fun we have with that, because we do have fun, don't we? Yeah. Like, it is a lot. Some of the funny ways, and your friends.
Yeah, they've learned to live with it, because they always make fun of it. They're always like, oh, you have your own language and you spell. What? And I just send voice notes now. Voice notes and videos. I don't bother with the spelling or typing.
Okay, so what would the title of your life story be?
Learn to live with my spellings.
That's fantastic. Amazing. Perfect. So thank you both so much for sharing your experiences with us. It's great to have the young person's perspective with Belle and also the parent's perspective with Lou as well. So thank you so much, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you.